Hey, friends. So, been talking about how Earth is in an ecotone, an in between liminal space between an old story and a new story. And so, I want to be a little more specific about what I mean by that. And so, we're going to go through a little bit of the physics of how that might be happening. And it starts with the science of cymatics. And for those of you who aren't already familiar with cymatics, it is the science of how sound, frequency, vibration can create, maintain, and destroy the seemingly solid objects that we interact with here in three-dimensional reality. And so I'll show you a little video. The easiest way to describe it is by seeing it in action. So as we watch this video, what you're seeing is sand or salt on a vibrating plate, and they can turn the frequency to specific vibrations, and you see the sand spontaneously self-organize into predictable geometric shapes. And this happens at specific harmonic frequencies. Think middle C, the white keys on the piano. And as you go from one frequency to the next, the geometries shift and different shapes arise. And you can see that in between those harmonic nodes, the patterns sort of dissolve and get messy, and the sand is just sort of bouncing around chaotically until you hit that next harmonic node, and then it spontaneously flips into the next geometric shape. So that's cymatics, and it is sort of a governing feature of reality here. And so next, let's go to LIGO. This is the Nobel Prize-winning science, where a team from Caltech University proved the final hypothesis of Einstein's special theory of relativity, which is that physical space has physical qualities. And the fabric of space-time itself is vibrating, rippling like the ocean or a pond. And this is fascinating. This I equate with the Vedic concept of the ether. And so outer space is not an empty vacuum, but it in fact is infinitely dense, like a big ocean with these waves. And so you can imagine planets and black holes like big boats zooming across the water, leaving gravitational waves in their wake. And so these waves are then combining, interacting, and as you know, on choppy water, sometimes those waves combine and double in amplitude. Sometimes they cancel each other out. You got a sine wave and a cosine wave, plus one, negative one, and it creates this flat line. And sometimes they're just chaotic and choppy and all over the place. And so if we know that frequency, vibration, waveforms can create the patterns we see in solid matter, and all of space-time itself is a big jumble of frequencies, then perhaps it makes sense that as the Earth zooms through space, that it's interacting with wave patterns of a different frequency, creating different material circumstances. So here's an image of this comes from LIGO, where in the center, those two dots are supermassive black holes that are caught in each other's orbit, and as they actually then merge, it's like dropping a stone in a still pond, and the gravitational waves ripple out from there. And so the suggestion is that the solar system is doing that too, and the planets are giving off their gravitational waves and combining. And this is my hypothesis for how astrology works. It's all about measuring the geometric relationships between the planets, which have their own unique frequency, their own quality of a wake that they give off. Jupiter gives off bigger waves than Mercury, perhaps. Mercury's moving a lot faster, smaller boat. And then based on the geometric relationships where Earth is, we can calculate, okay, if Jupiter gives off a big wave like this and Mercury's doing a little wave like that, based on where Earth is, how are those waves going to combine? Is it going to be smooth and beautiful or a little bit choppy? So the thing to remember is that Earth is zooming through space like this, right? We are in orbit in a circular fashion around the sun, but also the sun is zooming through space. So the suggestion is that as Earth zooms through space, we're moving into a new area of the galaxy. As the sun orbits the black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, we are moving into a new zone. And so for the past, call it 1500, maybe 2000 years, we've been at something like middle C, and there's been relative stability in the systems, the ways of knowing, the standard relationships between people on Earth, and obviously there's tumult within that. And now, as we're moving into a new zone, we're somewhere between middle C and D, the next note up. And so all the sand particles on the vibrating plate that is planet Earth are a little bit jumbled, bouncing around chaotically. And as we continue moving into that new vibration, there will come a time where all the sand particles that are humans and the ecosystems on Earth will spontaneously self-organize into the next geometric frequency and the next organized pattern. And so when might this happen? One of the things to look at would be the great ages. So, we go through the age of Pisces and we're approaching the age of Aquarius. However, according to Vedic astrology, we are still about 400 years away from the age of Aquarius. And so these great ages are about 2,196 years in length. That's the amount of time it takes the sun to move through one sign of the zodiac. And so the way these ages work is there's three phases, right? There's an introduction, a period of stability, and then a fading as then the next age kicks in, creating a waveform. So it's about 500 years as the new age comes on, about 1,000 years of it being that age, and then about 500 years of dissolution, transformation, transition into the next age. And so the sun rises on the spring equinox these days at about 6 degrees of Pisces. So it's got another 6 degrees to move towards the age of Aquarius. It takes the sun about 72 years to move 1 degree through that zodiac. And so 6 times 72 is about 420. And so there we are. But we are in the descending pattern of the age of Pisces, approaching the age of Aquarius. And so when you think in galactic time, deep time, that's actually not very long. And so it's appropriate to see the old systems breaking down, the old patterns no longer holding true. They're not as stable. That geometric structure that is the 3D reality we see around us is no longer as stable. So we're going through this ecotone in between harmonic nodes. And so there's light at the end of the tunnel. And it's also not anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with Earth. It's going through an appropriate evolutionary cycle from one frequency to the next. And so here we are. Enjoy the ride. Notice all the ways that humanity is acting like a bunch of sand particles who don't quite know where to go, don't quite know where they fit in the pattern. And what we can do in the meantime is to tune into our new frequency, to be embodying the most up-to-date, authentic version of our soul level gifts. And the more we can tune into that and stabilize in that, that has the capacity to have a fractal effect and support the new frequency that the Earth wants to become established in. So if that makes sense, would love to hear what you think about that, and would love to chat with you about how we can play in this new realm. So that's it for now. I'll look forward to seeing you soon.